And before we move on to our next session, I would like to thank a few more of our great sponsors, Bank West and First National Bank. The summit would not be possible if not for their generosity, so let's give them a round of applause. Agriculture is an industry that is constantly shifting and evolving. These changes can bring opportunities, but they can also bring challenges. It will be up to the next generation of producers to find new ways to meet these challenges head-on. Our next speaker is South Dakota State University President Dunn. President Dunn will share with us some of the many ways that SDSU is working to prepare the next generations to take control and solve future obstacles that they may face. President Dunn was named the 20th president of SDSU in April of 2016, just the 4th alumnus chosen to lead the institution. President Dunn has a rich academic background, was a successful rancher and farm operator, and is a published author and researcher. He is a nationally recognized expert in beef production and ranching systems. Additionally, he has a deep historical and cultural knowledge of South Dakota State University and strong statewide relationships with industry influencers and stakeholders. President Dunn and his wife, Jane, live on their family's original homestead north of Brookings, where they raised their 2 sons. I personally had the pleasure of working with President Dunn when he was Dean of the College of Ag and Bio, and I was the Ag Bio advocate. So I'm proud to introduce him once again. So President Dunn, please come to the podium.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. I must say that I get to do a lot of public speaking, and I will tell you, it's harder for me this morning speaking to friends who so when Becca said, look out and what do you see, and for me, it's all friends. And so this is actually harder than speaking to strangers, I think. So hope I do well and live up to your expectations. It's really an honor to be at the Governor's Ag Conference and be asked to present. This has been a very successful event over the last several years, and I've had the honor of attending many of them, I guess, and it's an absolute thrill to be here with you this morning. So again, thank you for inviting me, and I hope my comments are somewhat provocative and stimulating. Becca did an absolutely tremendous job. That was a great presentation about food and food integrity, and I have some comments that parallel hers and hopefully reinforce some of her statements. Certainly learned a lot from that presentation. Just thought I'd keep things in context here. I ranched and farmed for 25 years, and both in Mission and in Brookings. And so I'm actually a pretty good roper, or was. And I just want to get the playing floor level here. And so I've had the privilege of ranching and farming through droughts and blizzards and crazy policies that the government threw out. And so if you have a bunch of cattle on feed in the dairy buyout, and a lot of you won't remember the dairy buyout, but some of us do, who had cattle on feed in 1986, and just a devastating impact that had for the beef cattle industry for a few months there when you're trying to sell cattle. So I've been in the arena, and so I think I have a really strong background in agriculture, in production agriculture. I had the opportunity to change careers, driven by some family decisions outside of my control and the death of my parents, and so reinvented myself and got to be on the faculty at SDSU and at Texas A&M Kingsville, and got to do just had an exciting, wonderful time teaching and learning and writing and traveling. The years that I was in Texas and Texas A&M Kingsville developing the King Ranch Institute for Ranch Management, I got to see operations all over the United States, from Pennsylvania to the state of Washington, North Dakota to Texas, and everywhere in between. So it was a great experience for me, and really broadened my understanding of agriculture and the challenges and the opportunities the challenges we face, but the opportunities that those might bring. Now I find myself late in life, and I have the real privilege of serving as the president of my alma mater. I will tell you I've had a lot of great experiences, but in my life, certainly being lucky enough to have Jane be a life partner with me in raising two boys. But we awarded 2,800 degrees, baccalaureate degrees at SDSU last year. That's 45% of the regental system. We're really proud of that. But I got to shake 2,800 hands on one day, and my hand was pretty numb. But what an incredible thrill. It's absolutely so exciting to see young people go through the rigors of higher ed, and Dr. Pritchard's here, and having been a student of his, he understands the rigor from the other side because he was a very rigorous teacher. But to have them come through that and launch themselves into life is a thrill of my lifetime, and to do that every year is just amazing. Lots of challenges to talk about. I listed 4 there for you today, and food, like we just talked about. I'm going to bring my somewhat naive perspective compared to Becca's very in-depth perspective. I'm going to talk about overproduction, and I know I thought about this for the last couple of weeks, and I know that's a little bit gutsy to talk about in a year where we won't have overproduction, at least in the major crops of South Dakota. But it is an enormous challenge, and I'll talk about that. I will beat the drum on the environment and how passionate I am for stewardship of our natural resources, and then talk about leadership, and in the end tie that together with what SDSU is doing to help prepare to meet those challenges. Well, I can tell you that one thing, that food doesn't make this food and this food system in the marketplace, what a confusing situation. We just heard a great analysis of it and a challenge for us, but if you think about, if you didn't know the food system as well as we all do, and if you came from Mars or from being gone for a while and you walked into a supermarket, you'd just be absolutely floored, whether it's in Brookings, South Dakota, or on the coast, or anywhere in America. The choices are incredible. Fresh fruit and vegetables all year round. Incredible choices on beef, very safe food, and we know that, and just an amazing experience to go into a supermarket. And for some of us who are aging rapidly here, a very different experience than when I was a young person. But the other side of that is to think about a store. So if you came from Mars and went into a supermarket, and then you went into a complete nutrition store, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but are you kidding me? Complete nutrition. There's no food in that store. There's pills, and there's powders, and there's drinks, and there's all kinds of things, but there's no food. And it can't be complete nutrition. It drives me crazy. And yet, if you're a consumer, that's the world that they live in, because that complete nutrition store was right next to a grocery store. I saw it in Billings, Montana. It doesn't make any sense, and the American consumers spend billions of dollars on pills and powders and drinks that talk about complete nutrition in some way or another, and balancing our diet. Even total cereal, which I've had a lot in my life. Think about that. Total nutrition in one bowl of cereal in the morning. And yet, and contrast that with that rich experience in a supermarket. It's absolutely, I think, wacky. And it doesn't make much sense. But in the marketplace, if you're a consumer, I tested this out in my own life, in my own world, and on a Saturday morning went to one of the 2 farmers markets in Brookings, and and saw this beautiful display of green beans in a basket and a towel, and they were $4 a pound. And I thought, wow, that's green beans in a towel. I didn't really grow up that way, did we? We went out and picked green beans for Grandma or whatever and snapped them and canned them and froze them, and then ate those, and now we can eat fresh beans all year round. So I immediately jumped in my truck and went to Walmart, and green beans were 75 cents a pound. And if you took that picture to the Harvard Business School and presented a commodity like green beans, there would be a 5 times different swing, a mile apart in price. The guys at Harvard would say everybody should raise green beans in towels, right? And present them to the consumer that way. But we know it doesn't work that way because of oversupply, overproduction, and an enormous difference in consumer preference and consumer ability to pay. And I think that the Walmart green beans get a really bad rap in modern consumerism. Walmart provides extremely good food at a very low price, which is extremely important for many, many consumers. There are very, very few consumers who can pay on a regular basis 5 times more for something that if you did approximate analysis on would have the exact same characteristics of fiber, protein, and all the major nutrients. So again, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. You can't have that marketplace with that much confusion in it, but we do. And we expect them to figure it out and make sense of it. And I agree with Becca that the consumer is king. And how do you make sense of it as farmers and ranchers in South Dakota? I just have a couple of points. In Brookings today, there are multiple family farms that are selling the equivalent of green beans, but it might be tomatoes or corn or fresh ear corn. And so it's Jensen's and Braun's and Sanderson's and Helling's and Gilkerson's, and they sell at farmer. Model of hitting that extreme marketplace is really interesting, and to see these major family farms reacting to the marketplace very logically and intelligently is pretty cool. To respond to Becca's challenge about building trust and building loyalty and brand, I think certified Angus beef has to be one of the most remarkable stories of success in American agriculture, but really in business. An effort in the 1970s by a few folks in St. Joe, Missouri at the American Angus Association trying to sell more bulls turns into a powerhouse for the beef industry to build trust, to build consistency, to build price for all beef. I think certified Angus beef has been an enormous success story, not only for beef, but for food. And this is from a guy who grew up with Hereford cattle. So, but I think about I think one of our challenges is to do that, to do the certified Angus beef model, some variation of that more often, because it has proven itself to be extremely powerful. And so Sanderson strawberries and Brookings are the best you can get. And actually, you have to pay them to go, if you want, you can pay the Sandersons to bend over and pick strawberries on a hot afternoon, and then you get to take the strawberries home and can them or whatever. But I would not pay for the privilege of picking strawberries on a hot afternoon, but many, many people do. So it's an amazing consumer market. I'd leave this section with learn, grow, and explore and experience. I've had, again, this enormous privilege of visiting a farm along the Columbia River in the state of Washington with 600 center pivots. And all of it grew food, and it all went just one step away from the consumer. Potatoes, green beans, and the wheat that they grew went right to the consumers. There was a mill in there somewhere for flour, but it's just an enormous company, and that farm is an enormous company, produces, again, an enormous amount of food, and has built trust and brand and loyalty, and is extremely profitable with 680 center pivots, and that was a few years ago when they were growing. But we also have Sanderson strawberries and lots of small farms that are profitable and are successful. Learning about the breadth and depth of agriculture is all of our jobs. Understanding General Mills, who employs a lot of our graduates and we're in relationship with on oat breeding, and have you asked yourself why they've rented 140,000 acres west of Pierre, the Gunsmoke Farm? Why are they entering production agriculture? And I would challenge everybody in this room to understand that decision as well and discuss it, because that is very, very important for a Fortune 100 company to enter production agriculture. And from what I know, and I visited their world headquarters in Minneapolis, it's because they couldn't source the quality of cereal grains that they expected and that they wanted. And so they entered production agriculture to do it. And if that's a trend, then this is going to, we better be aware and better be ready for dramatic change. They have 6,000 brands of food and multiple, think of underneath that, they have thousands of products, and they're entering production agriculture. So again, explore, grow, learn, experience this breadth of agriculture. Talk to somebody at a farmer's market and learn about General Mills or whoever, because it's changing, it's growing, it has opportunity, has impacts on all of us. Again, I take it with some cautiousness to talk about overproduction in a year where we won't have it. But generally speaking, in the last few years, in the last 2 years, in 17 and 18 in South Dakota, extreme environmental challenges, and we raised some of the biggest crops we've ever raised. Late getting into the field, hard to get crops out, very climate weather challenges were extreme, and we raised some of the biggest crops we've ever raised. Certainly won't this year. But that oversupply and the sensitivity of the marketplace to very small changes in those supplies and drives price crazy is something, again, that we better understand and learn and be able to take advantage of those market swings, because they are exasperated in our community. I've had the opportunity to travel some around the world, and I will tell you, everywhere I go, including a trip to China, food is in excess. In New Zealand, there's more milk and lamb and wool than they know what to do with. In Eastern Europe, where my wife's family was from, we got to visit 2 years ago, from apricots to wheat to soybeans, non-GMO soybeans, enormous production, very low prices. You could buy a pound of apricots for cents, for pennies, because of the enormous production of fresh fruit that then they try to ship all over the world, and just like farmers in the United States, and I've seen the same. In going to China, you would certainly there's discrepancies in very extreme discrepancies in availability of food for Chinese people, but enormous levels of production, and the food marketing system is naive compared to ours, but tremendous volumes of food everywhere we went. Technology, and maybe that's part of the land grant system, but the yield curve on corn is the potential exceeds even the yields that we've seen, and talking about 300 bushel corn and plus is commonplace now, not this year, but certainly will be again here soon when the weather patterns change. Climate change, for whatever reason, I will tell you, having been in South Dakota most of my life, this is a very, very different place than it was in the 1950s when I was a little boy, or when I was at SDSU in the 1970s, or ranching West River in the 80s and 90s. It's a very, very different place. And it has been for the last decade, and I don't think we'll have another drought, but this is wet and warm and changing. The consumer pressure on price, again, very few people will pay $4, and lots of demand for cheap food and expectations, so that when you see Arby's and McDonald's selling entire meals, more than 1,000 calories for less than $5, food is cheap, and the expectation of it is cheap. 2 Whoppers and fries and a drink for less than $5. It's an amazing world of overproduction and cheap food, and we have to figure it out. The loss of diversity in cropping system plays into that, and having seen agriculture as an adult now for 40 years, the loss of diversity in South Dakota's agriculture is alarming to me, but even in the United States, I think we would be stronger financially and economically if we had more diversity in our agricultural production systems. I talk a lot about, when I speak, about my concerns about the environment and our natural resources, and this picture is from north of White, South Dakota. It wasn't taken this year, but I could have taken it 100 places that I saw this year. Enormous erosion. We had erosion on our farm. We rent our farm out, but we had erosion that was unacceptable to me, certainly as a landowner, on our farm this year. And we can do better, and we must do better. And I think that the consumers that Becca was talking about expect that slide, not that slide. And if you want to build consumer trust, if you listen to those voices in that video that she played, this is what they expect. And that system, that buffered system, certainly on that grassland, maybe you think that's easy, but that system could be applied to that land too. And the results would be cleaner water in the Big Sioux, more consumer trust, more consumer acceptance of farmer, more trust in us as they look at us as stewards of a collective resource of America. And so I challenge you to think every chance you get about ways to improve sustainability. We've had a rocky history in agriculture. The Dust Bowl days were the result of agriculture production that was out of sync with the climate challenges that they faced then. With drought, they had no way they tilled everything, and they tilled it deep, and they tilled it often, and when challenged with a climate of a drought, it blew away, and it blew all the way to Washington, D.C. And so I keep hammering on that drum, Jeff, that the environment's really important. Leadership is absolutely important to develop in young people, and we're going to hear from some of them here in a minute, which will be very exciting for us. I can tell you I had the chance to, when I was teaching, and I don't think there's anything better than teaching. It's a great opportunity. In that class of kids that a group of us took to China, there's multiple standout students, and one of them is Adam Krause, who just call out Adam as a young leader in South Dakota agriculture, and a lot of you know him. He's a great young man, graduate of SDSU. He was superintendent of Little I, on and on and on. We need more Adam Krauses, and if I went through all those kids on that slide, I can tell you there's leaders in dairy science, or in dairy, there's leaders in veterinary medicine now, emerging from these young people, and that is a very exciting thing. But we need to encourage and help young people explore leadership opportunities. And it's our duty to have, in a participatory democracy, to have that kind of leadership emerge. What are we doing in SDSU? Well, lots of exciting things. We have travel courses. We have a new 2+2 veterinary school with the University of Minnesota to supply more homegrown veterinarians back into our communities. Thanks, Nate, for the First Dakota National Bank e-trading lab. 4 of our kids went to an international conference on agriculture in Guangzhou, China, a couple of weeks ago, competed against 20 internationally renowned universities in an ag business conference, and our 4 kids, 2 of them from South Dakota, 1 from Minnesota, and 1 was a foreign student, those kids won the whole shooting match. And those are our kids from that lab who learned at SDSU, and I hope you're as proud of them as I am. But Nate, it was because of the lab, and thank you for that. And the other partners in the room, Farm Credit Systems, Rachel, and others really helped us keep that going. The degree in precision ag, the first of its kind in the land grant system, and Van is here. Van Kelly was one of the people that brought that forward. And now we will be building the Raven Precision Ag Center here very quickly. Many in this room helped us build a $63 million new animal disease research and diagnostic lab, the most sophisticated lab in the Northern Plains for sure, and we're very happy about that and what it's going to do for all of us. I'll skip down to Every Acre Counts, probably the largest single extension project that I know of, 40,000 acres of precision agriculture and its impact on conservation and yield and profit for farmers. We're very excited to be part of that with game fish and parks and corn and pheasants and all kinds of partners. The last thing I have there is the Second Century Habitat Fund that Governor Noem has started, and I'm pleased to serve on that board. Again, that's a leadership response to an environmental challenge that we have. When pheasants and monarch butterflies become challenged, I hope everybody is as concerned as Governor Noem is and I am about the state of our environment and the future of it for our children. This is my last slide. I'll tell you, SDSU, because of your help, and I see many friendly faces who helped us get over the line on rebuilding the facilities at SDSU and making our program new and exciting. We have the facilities and the faculty and the leadership and the academic programs on campus to meet the challenges. We've got the young people who are your sons, daughters, nephews and nieces and granddaughters and grandsons. We're proud to serve you, and it's been a great honor to be with you this morning. Thank you very much.